homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Now, we will begin our explanation of the Mahayana treatise, the Bodhicharyavatara, Ocean of Good Explanations. At this point, we are discussing examining the benefits of applying antidotes and thus not becoming weary of contracting afflictions. Today's verse mainly explains that we should always be diligent and practice patience. For those of us who are learning the conduct of the Mahayana Bodhisattvas, the very first quality we must have is diligence. Without diligence, as both the treasury of good advice and the just king state, even small tasks cannot be accomplished, let alone great ones. Therefore, as practitioners, we should learn from the diligence the great masters and accomplished beings of the past demonstrated. They practiced diligently for the sake of the Dharma and to attain liberation and worked hard to overcome the afflictions. Compared to them, we should ask ourselves repeatedly what kind of effort we have truly made in order to achieve realization. Only by reflecting in this way will we come to understand the necessity of diligence. So, in the following verse, we are encouraged to look at the world around us. In this world, countless people are busy and struggling just to survive, but the benefits they gain are not that significant. They are not of great meaning. Yet for us who seek to bring vast benefit to all sentient beings, as limitless as the sky, leading them to unsurpassed perfect enlightenment, why would we not need diligence? We must be diligent and patient. This is the main point discussed below, and the verse says, if fishermen, outcasts, farmers, and so forth, with only thought of their own livelihood, forbear the harms of heat and cold and such, why don't I bear with those for being's weal? Here, if we look at the literal meaning, in this world, people like fishermen, butchers, farmers, and so on, are only concerned with their own livelihood and survival. Yet they are able to endure and get through the suffering of cold, heat, and such. But for those of us who have generated unsurpassed bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings, why would we not need to bear with those sufferings? We certainly must. Of course, this is something that should be very clear to everyone. Most people in the world do not understand the law of cause and effect. For the sake of their livelihood, for their own survival, they disregard everything, even risking their lives working day and night, just as we often see with fishermen and butchers, for example. Take fishermen, for instance. Early in the morning, they go to the fish market, no matter whether it is winter or summer, whether the weather is cold or hot. They never stop working. In bad weathers or environments, they still endure all kinds of hardship just for their own profit. Sometimes by the seaside, when I was in Dalian and also in Taizhou, I often saw the hardships of these fishermen by the sea. Before heading out to sea to avoid being swallowed by the waves, they first pray before the deity Mazu, whom they believe in, after performing all kinds of rituals. Still, quite a few of them do not return safely from the sea. Day and night they are always at the sea. Sometimes at night in the darkness, the sea is vast and boundless. At such times they rely on a small lamp and continue fishing, living the life of a fisherman. So, when we see this, we can easily realize that Shantideva's use of this analogy to illustrate worldly suffering is truly a very apt explanation. And it's not just fishermen. Hunters who kill animals and butchers who slaughter sentient beings also work very hard for their lives. We often see them when we do life release practices. They usually get up very early, around 3 or 4 in the morning, and they start slaughtering pigs or yaks, and by dawn, all the meat for the market is already prepared and ready for sale. At night, they usually do not go to bed before midnight. So from the lives of these people, we can see just how hard and exhausting it is. And then in our world, whether workers, farmers, herders, or business people, people of all kinds, they all struggle for their own survival. The pressures of daily life and mental stress are truly immense. Some people may seem to be quite well off financially with good economic conditions, but their mental stress far exceeds that of those with less. For example, take a big contractor in the world. The workers under him labor hard during the day, and after work, when they go to bed at night, they sleep soundly. But the boss, although he appears to be making money, if the business goes well, he may earn some profit. But in reality, besides the physical effort, their mental burden is even greater. So looking at the lives of everyone in the world, we can see that what the Buddha taught, that samsara is suffering, truly reveals the reality of sentient beings' minds. So here too it is saying that people endure so much physically and mentally just for their own survival and livelihood. The pain they experience in their hearts is just as great. I think that for some of us, especially monastics who live a pure life, we may not fully understand the suffering of worldly life, but for most people in society, they must have vivid experience. Because in today's society, countless people do not rest during the day and do not sleep well at night for the sake of survival. Among us Tibetans, there is a saying, leaving early and returning late, using the stars as one's hat and the frost as one's shoes. This is just like the Chinese saying, traveling under the stars and moon. Whether in extreme heat or in storms, strong winds and heavy rain, no environment can stop them from working. They must keep going. Even here at our academy, we may encounter many workers on the way every day. Look at how hard they work. Just now, as I was coming here, it was already close to 9 p.m., but there was still a group of people working over there. They started to work around 7 in the morning, but in the end, what do they get? They get just a little bit of wages, but this money is far from enough to support their lives. We know that many people work just to pay for their children's education and have little left for anything else. Nowadays, many people's children go to school, from elementary to middle school, high school, university, and even graduate school. And just one school can cost hundreds of thousands of yuan. So for some people, the pressure of life is truly overwhelming, almost impossible to bear. That is why nowadays in society, many people's health cannot keep up. All kinds of chronic illnesses and mental health issues are constantly emerging. So for some monastics, life is relatively easy and simple. Just having a meal, living and practicing alone. They can wear the same robes for decades without having to change style. So they may not know what pressure feels like, especially those who have lived this way since childhood may think the world is peaceful and without problems. But in reality, it is not so. For many people in the world who do not study Buddhism, they are busy all day long for their families, for their children, and for their parents. There is nothing else beyond this. In just a few short decades of life, they risk everything and endure all kinds of hardship just to support this impermanent body. So they keep working without end. So many people in the world are living in this way, which really shows the suffering of worldly life. So what do worldly people actually gain? At most, they get enough to eat and wear, and live a relatively comfortable life. That is their ultimate goal. But what is the real use of this? Given the impermanence of human life, no matter how financially well off, how good people live their lives, or how beautiful they were in youth, none of it can remain in this world. So even if you obtain these things, they have little real value or meaning. But as practitioners, especially those who have generated bodhicitta, we are completely different from worldly people. Why is that? It is because our purpose is to benefit sentient beings. Just as it is said in the Avatamsaka Sutra, not seeking happiness for oneself, but wishing all beings to be free from suffering. We measure ourselves with this precious motivation and set striving for the welfare of all beings as our ultimate goal. The meaning and value of this motivation or goal surpasses all the aims and desires of ordinary people. Therefore, since we have already generated bodhicitta, we should not let small hardships, such as lacking food or clothing or having poor health, become reasons for us to regress from the intention of bodhicitta. Nor should they stop us from carrying out the great aspirations of a bodhisattva. For example, in order to attend this teaching, some people may have to walk a long way. Yesterday, I heard some Dharma friends sharing others' experiences in their studies, which is truly admirable. One person has 3 children at home. She gets up at 6 in the morning to cook for them and take them to school. Even before that, she gets up to study this treatise. At night, after coming home from her job, it is usually around 11 o'clock. After 11, she continues to study on her own. In the end, whether it's homework or other aspects, she does very well. She feels that encountering the Dharma is extremely rare, even in millions of eons. especially in a big city, being able to encounter such dharma, she feels that this human life is truly meaningful. So no matter what family pressures or difficulties she faces, she is determined to study diligently and reports to me through various means. When I read this, I felt that my own diligence is not as great as hers, although I am not particularly lazy in Dharma study. Although we are all human, but the strength of some people's diligence is probably not the same as mine. Some Dharma friends here are extremely diligent. As you know, when the street lights come on in the morning, they are reciting texts outside and only rest very late at night. But some people may not be like this. If it rains a little today and the road is slippery, they might say, I can't go to the study session. Or if they have a stomach ache or feel a bit unwell, they won't attend class. So today they have this reason, tomorrow they have that reason. If we lack courage and perseverance, we will certainly encounter many obstacles in this process. There are many adverse conditions that hinder our study and practice, while favorable conditions for learning can be extremely few. So in this world, there are indeed good people and not so good people, some who are very diligent and some who are not diligent at all. So we should often reflect as the verses instruct. As you can see in the world, so many people work so hard just to survive. And after all this hardship, they earn some money and support their families. But what lasting benefit does this bring to them? In fact, there is hardly any real benefit. But for us, our plans extend over lifetimes, even for countless lives to come. So even if we encounter a little difficulty, we should not lose our confidence. I remember that His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok once went from Sertar to Barkham for medical treatment. On the way to the hospital, because the road was under construction, there was a traffic jam. It seemed they were stuck on the road for several hours. After several hours, His Holiness said, when I see so many workers building the road and working hard, I recall a verse from Shantideva. This verse truly shows how people in the world endure all kinds of hardship without hesitation for the sake of survival. They go through so much suffering and hardship. So for us, who have made aspirations and generated bodhicitta, and who have the motivation to pursue transcendent bliss, why would we not need diligence? Later, after returning from the hospital, His Holiness often mentioned in class what he saw at that time. Of course, we can also see that workers and farmers are truly suffering greatly in this world. Not only is their work hard, but even just surviving is difficult. Sometimes in the hospital, I see some patients whose families are extremely poor. These patients end up having to be rejected by many hospitals and suffer outside. When some people die, the hospital requires that the body be placed in their funeral home, which is directly connected to the crematorium, connected to the hospital. Nowadays, many social issues are quite complex. So for some people, especially for farmers and people in remote areas, the pressure of survival and daily life is truly greater than Mount Meru for them. Sometimes they may not be able to bear it. In our daily lives, no matter who we are, we all face some degree of pressure in life. On the surface, it may seem that government employees are living quite well, but in reality, the pressure they feel inside may be much greater. Sometimes when their abilities, skills, and wisdom cannot compete with their companions, they may develop jealousy, arrogance, and other sorts of afflictions. This shouldn't be difficult to understand. So this time, after studying this treatise by Shantideva, everyone should reflect deeply in their hearts. Because among us, monastics are a minority. Most people are lay practitioners. I don't mean to say that after hearing this teaching, all of you lay practitioners should give up your families, jobs, and work and immediately go to a solitary place and become monastics. That is not my intention. This is not realistic for you, nor is it necessary. Because sometimes, after hearing once or twice about the merits of ordination, some people want to become monastics right away without thinking it through. They don't consider anything and immediately want to ordain. But such a motivation for ordination is not stable. When difficulties arise, they may not be able to handle them. And if they return to lay life then, this is not good. So generally speaking, I am not asking everyone to get divorced or create family discord or to live completely independently, or to oppose all your family members. It's not good to have arguments at home, living separate lives from your family. Many great masters have said that not only should Buddhist families be harmonious, but Buddhists should also live in harmony with people of other religions. This is a principle of Buddhism. Anyway, whether you are a monastic or a lay person, if after learning Buddhism your personality completely changes and you no longer care for your parents or family, or even stop cooking for your own children, spending all day reciting the Diamond Sutra alone in a small room, this kind of extreme individualism is not something Buddhism encourages. On the one hand, we should inspire others with the spirit of Buddhism, 这个非常有必要的. But at the same time, we should remember that people in the world work so hard just for a few decades of life, rushing about and exhausting themselves. But how much effort and energy have we put into studying the Dharma? Some great Kadampa masters also said that if all the effort we put into worldly matters were instead applied to the Dharma, most of us would have already achieved realization. As we mentioned earlier, those fishermen and butchers get up so early and go to bed so late, with hardly any rest throughout the day. If we studied the Dharma with such effort, our own afflictions would certainly be reduced. But most people do not understand this principle at all. So for those who do not know the Dharma, we should give rise to compassion and try every possible way to help them correctly understand the profound meaning of the Dharma. This is very necessary. Therefore, after discussing this principle, everyone should make time to study and contemplate the Dharma. And this study and contemplation should not just be on the surface, not just for debate or to show off to others. We should develop a genuine inner certainty and understanding. Then, in our own minds, all the false and varied conceptual thoughts such as selfishness, vanity, pride, and so on can be eliminated and uprooted. This is very important for us as practitioners. Superficial constructed frameworks are not especially important for practitioners. This is something everyone should remember. Next, we will discuss reflecting on our commitments, thus not becoming weary of antidoting afflictions. In other words, it is unreasonable not to be diligent. Some of us may think, well, being diligent is also quite difficult. You might think this way. But next, we will discuss why we must be diligent. If we are unwilling to be diligent, then why did we generate bodhicitta in the first place? Earlier, Shantideva explained the great benefits of bodhicitta, encouraging us to find ways to enter the Mahayana path and give rise to this motivation. But after generating this motivation, we must hold ourselves to a higher standard. So he was truly very wise. Recently, a Dharma teacher went to my hometown to give teachings. On the second day, at noon, he said, "All the young people, come with me. Let's spend a wonderful time on the grasslands and among the flowers. I'll buy each of you a bottle of Coke or any drink you like." So many young people rode their motorcycles and followed him. They rode for dozens of kilometers to a field of flowers far away. There he taught them a lot of Dharma, had them sing and dance and gave them candy and drinks and so on. In the afternoon, as they were about to return, he said, "Today I did everything I could to make you happy. Now you should repay my kindness. And to repay me, I ask each of you to vow not to commit the crime of killing." Having been treated well, all the young people had to agree on his request. So in the end, everyone made the vow not to kill. Some young people later thought, maybe I shouldn't have gone. But there was nothing they could do. So here, Shantideva has been teaching about the benefits of bodhicitta, encouraging us to give rise to bodhicitta. After we take the bodhisattva vow, now the requirements are stricter. Now we cannot be lazy, and we must benefit sentient beings. Why must we benefit sentient beings? The following verse says, "When I swore I would free all beings to the ends of space in all directions from the afflictions, I myself was not yet free of the afflictions." How is it speaking without knowing my limitations was not insane? Here it says that we have made the extraordinary vow to liberate all beings before all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and our Vajra masters. Earlier, in both Chapter 3 and Chapter 1, we explained the benefits of Bodhicitta, and we made the noble vow before all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and holy beings to benefit all sentient beings, lifetime after lifetime. At that time, we also promised to free all beings from their afflictions, because to truly benefit sentient beings is not done by other means. It is to help them eliminate all the afflictions from their minds, including desire, anger, and ignorance. If we want to benefit sentient beings, we ourselves must be diligent and free from afflictions. If we are not free from afflictions and lack diligence, then to say we will liberate countless beings is just empty talk. It is making grand claims beyond my capacity, which is not appropriate. If one acts in this way, isn't it really no different from being insane? Why so? Because earlier, before all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, we declared, I will liberate countless beings. But now, in actual practice, not only do we fail to benefit others, we cannot even reduce our own afflictions at all. In this way, we are essentially lying before the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. This is truly saying something that is completely unreasonable. Such behavior is really no different from being mentally confused. So Shantideva urges us to eliminate the afflictions in our own minds. If we cannot resolve our own afflictions, how could we possibly benefit sentient beings? It's simply not possible. In the past, His Holiness also said that for ordinary people like us, it is not realistic to completely eliminate all our afflictions before benefiting others. But after generating bodhicitta, we should be different from ordinary beings. We must do our best to reduce and counteract our own afflictions. We should increase all the positive qualities in our own minds. If we do this, then we will have the opportunity to truly benefit sentient beings. So first we must reflect on and do whatever we can to make sure our mindset and afflictions are not the same as before. Before I studied Buddhism, or when I first started, my temperament was very rough and my afflictions were very strong. But now, through studying Mahayana Buddhism, I have tried to gradually move my mind in a more harmonious direction. This is important for practitioners. If there is no progress at all in our own minds, then talking about benefiting others is really just a joke. The Buddha also said in the sutras, if you have not liberated yourself, how can you liberate others? If you have not attained liberation, how can you benefit others? It's like a blind person trying to lead the way. If you are like a blind person, how could you possibly lead others? It's simply impossible. Therefore, the Buddha also said in other Vinaya Sutras, if you cannot tame yourself, it is impossible to tame others. Nagarjuna also said that if we have not attained true liberation, then the so-called benefiting of sentient beings is completely self-contradictory. Therefore, if we wish to benefit others, we must diligently subdue our own afflictions. So these scriptural sources tell us that we should do our best to eliminate our own afflictions. Of course, eliminating afflictions is not easy. We should all understand that, especially as ordinary beings, it is very easy to say this, but in actual practice, it is quite difficult. For myself, I often say, you should eliminate your afflictions. On the surface, it may seem like I have made progress in purifying my own mind, or that my mind is already very pure. But when I urge you to purify your mind, I do feel very ashamed. However, as a teacher, if I say I can't eliminate afflictions, but you should, then this is not appropriate either. So for myself, I can't say I have completely eliminated them, but at least I have some ability to work with my afflictions. At least on the surface, it seems so. As ordinary people, we are all actually quite aware of the states of our own minds. Sometimes I do feel very ashamed, but then again, with the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the kindness and support of my gurus, I feel I'm making progress. Compared to my mindset before I truly entered the Dharma, my current mindset is much improved. The things that worldly people are attached to don't seem nearly as tempting or important to us who have spent years in studying and practicing the Dharma. We just don't hold on to things as tightly as before. We do feel that we are able to take things more lightly. In any case, whether you are a layperson or a monastic, I hope you will try to eliminate afflictions. If you cannot eradicate them completely, at least try to counteract and subdue your own afflictions. This is essential for anyone studying the Mahayana path. It is absolutely necessary. We must do our best to minimize the harm of afflictions and to stabilize and increase mindfulness and awareness in our own minds. We must not give rise to faint-heartedness. This is extremely important for anyone practicing the Dharma. It is truly very important. So after generating bodhicitta, if we do not benefit sentient beings at all and not care about working with our own afflictions, then we are no different from someone who's lost their mind. Someone like that isn't reliable at all. They just say whatever pops into their head, but never actually follow through. But we shouldn't be like that. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have already explained the benefits of bodhicitta. We have also carefully examined this with our own wisdom. After careful consideration, we made the vow before them. We have already promised to benefit sentient beings. Since we have made this commitment, we should do our best to honor it. We should try our utmost to benefit sentient beings. Even if we just meet a sentient being on the road, we should help them however we can. Sometimes for people like fishermen, farmers, or laborers, just as we described earlier, there are situations where we can't help. But even then, we should still give rise to compassion in our hearts. Today, I saw a boss who was overseeing a construction project here. While working on the project, he rented someone else's house. He was planning to return the house in the next day or two, but yesterday a fire suddenly broke out. The house was completely burned to ashes. Everything was destroyed. The owner was also very pitiful because the whole family depended on this house for their livelihood. Then the two families started arguing endlessly over the financial loss. As a monastic, I shouldn't get involved in these matters. But seeing how pitiful they were, I did what I could to help. So I tried to mediate and help them find a solution. I don't know much about these things, so I told them both sides are facing real difficulties. The boss hadn't made any money this year, and his business had already suffered heavy losses. His wife kept crying and crying. We sat there for over an hour, and her tears never stopped. She just kept weeping the whole time. At that moment, my heart really ached for them. I felt so sad and weighed down by it all. All afternoon, I felt as if something was weighing on my heart, as if a great mountain was pressing down on me. In reality, nothing actually happened. I just witnessed the situation. I offered them some advice. I said, both sides are really facing difficulties. It would be best if you could both make the greatest possible concessions. Both families said, whatever you say, we will listen. But it's not easy for me to say much. So, I just hope that both sides should try to make the biggest concessions they could. But no matter how much they compromised, when the force of karma ripens, their suffering simply couldn't be resolved. I deeply understand that sometimes people have a strong desire or plan to make money, to build a career, and to live a happy life. But even with these hopes, can they really succeed? Honestly, it's rare. In this world, it is truly not easy to accomplish anything. So sometimes when we see others in suffering, no matter how much we wish to help, there are still many situations we simply can't resolve. Still, even if we meet just one person in need on the road, we should do our best to help them. This is, of course, extremely important. If after generating bodhicitta and even taking the bodhisattva vow, we still do nothing to help others when we see them suffering, then this is really not appropriate at all. Our commitment and our actions are completely at odds with each other. So, are we really Mahayana Bodhisattvas? We can only answer that by honestly asking ourselves. Next, we will discuss persevering in counteracting afflictions. In the process of working with our afflictions, we must have courage and never give up or lose heart. Therefore, I'll never be turned back in subjugating the afflictions. Some people might think generating bodhicitta is extremely difficult. So now, can I just give up on it? Maybe I made a mistake. Back then, I didn't realize how difficult it would be to generate bodhicitta, with many precepts to keep and strict requirements to follow. Some people at the beginning have no idea what they are getting into, but when they see how strict the requirements are, they start thinking about quitting. Some might think, since I made the vow without really knowing my limits, can I just withdraw it? It's not that easy to withdraw. Taking the vow is easy just by going through a ceremony. But if you want to back out now, there's a price to pay. Otherwise, it's not that simple. Why is that? Because if you withdraw now, you'll miss out on the happiness of the higher realms for all your future lives. Also, there is no need to quit. Why? because it's the path walked by all the great masters of the past and countless accomplished beings throughout history. On the surface, it might seem difficult to benefit countless beings, but in reality, since the power of aspiration is incredibly strong, we will gradually awaken bodhicitta within. Just like Buddha Shakyamuni vowed, if the hells are not empty, I will not give up my aspiration. I will liberate all beings in this degenerate world. In fact, before all beings were liberated, the Buddha had long attained enlightenment. Therefore, the power of aspiration is truly immense. Omniscient Longchenpa also points out that although in the Sutrayana tradition, it takes 3 countless kalpas to gather accumulations and practice the Bodhisattva path, for those whose aspiration is extraordinarily powerful, they can actually gather the merit of countless kalpas in just a single instant. So, it doesn't have to take such a long time. Bodhisattva Ksitigarbha also made the vow, I will not attain Buddhahood until the hells are empty. This is also an extremely powerful aspiration. If we have such a powerful aspiration, we can quickly accumulate merit in a short time. So, in order to eliminate afflictions or to subjugate them, we must always persevere and never let our bodhicitta decline. There is really no need to let bodhicitta decline, and there is no need to be afraid of the possible hardship either. If we look at the great masters of the past, we can see that although they endured hardship after making great aspirations, what they went through was completely different from that of worldly people. Worldly people often suffer because they're driven by attachment and self-interest. But for bodhisattvas, they have no selfishness or grasping a true existence. So for them, benefiting sentient beings comes effortlessly. That's why there's really no reason for us to take back our vow. Of course, before our attachment to subject and object has eliminated, we still need to put in effort to reach such a state. But at a certain point, this diligence will be like a wildfire in a forest. With just a little breeze, it naturally blazes up on its own. With the support of our aspiration, our bodhisattva conduct will naturally grow, and our merit and qualities will keep increasing. I'll cling to this tenaciously and enter battle bearing a grudge against afflictions other than the type that conquers the afflictions. At this point, we should think in this way. All afflictions are what we need to abandon, and we must have a strong intention and aspiration to apply the antidotes that can overcome them. We should feel joy and enthusiasm in using these antidotes to eliminate afflictions. And toward the afflictions themselves, we should feel a sense of resentment. We need to face them with a kind of righteous anger. Always remember that afflictions have been harming us since beginningless time, so we should do everything we can to get rid of them. As we discussed earlier, if we don't hold this sense of resentment or a wish for fight back against our afflictions, our practice simply won't succeed. So it's essential to have this kind of resentment. And some people might ask, if you hold resentment toward afflictions, isn't that just another moment of anger? Wouldn't that destroy the merit and virtue you've accumulated over hundreds or thousands of eons? If we even give rise to anger toward afflictions, isn't that an afflictive thought? Wouldn't that create countless negative karma? No, it would not. Because in order to practice, we must battle with our afflictions. In fact, this is entirely reasonable. The Sutra of Perfect Enlightenment teaches using a thorn to remove a thorn. This means, for example, use like an eye for an eye. We can use the mind of affliction itself to counteract our own afflictions. Before we attain Buddhahood, there is no need to abandon this approach. To end being suffering, one should not eliminate this ignorance. This is also taught in this treatise. In order to end the suffering of beings, there's not eliminate the ignorance that serves as an antidote to our afflictions. Ultimately, from the highest perspective, even this is a kind of cognitive obscuration. So in order to attain the ultimate result, we should eliminate such afflictions. This kind of affliction is a similar kind of anger. This kind of righteous anger is something we cannot abandon for now. Why? If real anger arises, it destroys our virtuous roots and leads to afflictions and rebirth in the lower realms. But in our own minds, our anger toward afflictions is not actually an affliction itself, at least for now. A good example is Geshe Ben Gungyal. He was an excellent Kadampa practitioner. Whenever afflictions arose in his mind, he would call himself a bad monk, hit himself, and scold himself. This is actually the best example. When we truly practice, sometimes when afflictions arise in our minds, it is appropriate to have a negative attitude toward them. This will not become an affliction, nor will it become an obstacle to your liberation. Therefore, in our practice, some Dharma friends may oversleep in the morning, and when they wake up, they become very angry and even throw their alarm clock in the trash. They think this is a very bad attitude, but is this really so? Actually, it's quite good. It shows they are punishing themselves for not engaging in practice. This way they will make progress in it. So I think we should not see this as ordinary anger that needs to be eliminated. We shouldn't think that this kind of anger is to be avoided. When practicing, if we are not diligent or follow our teacher's instructions, it's reasonable to hold ourselves accountable. If we truly cannot discipline ourselves, we can ask other Dharma friends to help us. This is necessary. In some of our lay Buddhist study groups, Dharma friends often remind each other through calls and messages, don't miss this session or you'll face consequences next time. This may sound harsh. Is this person harming me, restricting my freedom? Actually, they are rescuing you from the jaws of the demon of afflictions. In my view, other forms of help, whether financial support or kind words, are not the ultimate form of assistance. The ultimate help comes when you begin to lose heart on the path, when you start to waver in your practice, and Dharma friends help you correct your mindset and return to the right path. They help you avoid falling back or sliding down. We must rely on our collective strength, working together toward the path of liberation. This kind of help is truly profound. Among our Dharma friends in Mahayana Buddhism, due to the ripening of past karma or being troubled by demonic obstacles and adverse conditions, some may risk losing their resolve on the path. When someone loses their determination, as the saying goes, the bystander sees clearly, those around them can see this. At such times, we should do everything possible to guide them back. This really is a great help for them. Some of us here used to feel they couldn't continue their studies. They were so troubled in their hearts. They didn't want to stay or study, but other Dharma friends helped them through various means, through conversation, by sharing stories, or with a little candy or small treats. People's mindsets can change very easily, like children. With the help of those Dharma friends, they gradually found their way back. For lay practitioners outside this valley, especially those who just enter Buddhism, you may not be able to tell the right path from the wrong. Some even have teachers who often discourage them. Don't study this treatise. It's not good for you. Just focus on practice. Practice is fine. But if the teacher hasn't practiced well, how can they expect their disciples to practice properly? So as you can see, in the process of studying the Dharma, many people encounter all kinds of obstacles or even demonic influences. They also know it's a demonic obstacle. Sometimes Mara may appear as a spiritual teacher to persuade you not to study the Dharma, saying it's meaningless. But I always think a true spiritual teacher will not discourage others from studying Shantideva's treatise, as so many accomplished beings in history have achieved realization through it. If someone advises you not to study, is that helpful or harmful to your path of practice? I think anyone with some understanding of Dharma will know the answer. For lay practitioners outside our academy, many encounter all kinds of obstacles. Some are obvious, some are subtle, some are somewhere in between. But whatever the case, for those who want to study, we will do our best to help them. And I hope all of you here will also do your best to help others. Of course, some cases are beyond help. Even in the Buddha's time, some beings still fell into the lower realms. Even the most compassionate, noble being in the world, our teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, could not save them. How much less can we ordinary people help those whose karma is ripening? So I really sympathize with those who lose heart on the path of Bodhi. But some people help those who had no faith in Buddhism develop faith, or those whose faith was only superficial, or who did not understand the true meaning of Buddhism, to develop and deepen their understanding through various means. In the course of our lives, a year or half a year is not a long time, but in such a short period, through studying this text, for some people, an irreversible seed of Bodhi is planted in their minds. This, I believe, is merit of unsurpassable value. In any case, I hope you will do your best to support others and not let them lose confidence. And in this process, it's okay to sometimes use a few critical words or point out someone's shortcomings, like, Didn't you say you were going to finish this treatise? What happened to you? Speaking a few harsh words like this to those who waver on the path is merely a semblance of affliction, not a real one, because you are not doing it for yourself. Many people today act for their own publicity or self-promotion, which is not good. We should not harbor selfish motives in our hearts while outwardly claiming to help or benefit others. That approach is wrong. But if we sincerely help others, then whatever words or actions we use on the surface are acceptable. Since we have all generated such great Mahayana Bodhicitta, which is truly rare throughout countless lifetimes, this lays a solid foundation for our future lives, lifetime after lifetime. It's best not to lose our spiritual resolve in this short life. That is my sincere hope. We will stop here for today.
Bandara Banma Sodargye